The howling wind tears at the heavy canvas of the imperial tent, a relentless specter echoing through the Danube Valley. Outside, the legions shiver in the frost, their breath blooming like ghosts in the biting night. Inside, the flickering oil lamp casts long, dancing shadows against the maps of a world teetering on the precipice of collapse. Marcus Aurelius sits, his quill poised over parchment, while the empire he serves threatens to dissolve into the encroaching darkness. He is the master of the known world, yet as a fever burns through the camp, claiming the lives of his soldiers, he finds himself a prisoner of a far more claustrophobic domain: his own mind. Why must the master of the Roman world seek refuge in silence? The weight of the crown is not made of gold. It is forged from the agonizing expectation of stability in an age of fragility. He stares at the ink pooling beneath his nib. Beyond these walls, the drums of conflict continue their rhythmic, haunting heartbeat, and the whispers of treachery drift through the ranks like cold fog. Yet, the emperor does not reach for his sword. He does not plot revenge against his rivals, nor despair at the thinning numbers of his legions. Instead, he reaches for the absolute stillness within. He realizes that the vast, marble halls of Rome are but a dream, and the roaring frontiers are but a fleeting tempest. When the foundations of one is reality tremble, the only architecture that remains standing is the fortress of the self. He writes not to dictate history, but to tame the chaotic currents of his own spirit. He understands that to command an empire is a trivial pursuit if one cannot first command the fleeting impulses of the heart. The shadows deepen, and the silence of the tent becomes profound. In this isolation, he finds a peculiar, terrifying liberty. He recognizes that no external force, that not the pestilence devouring his men, nor the deceit of those he trusted, can touch the citadel of his intellect unless he permits it. He is a king, a general, and a student of the invisible. As the blizzard rages against the fragile barrier of his sanctuary, Marcus Aurelius discovers the most dangerous truth of all. The greatest battle is never fought on the fields of Germania, but in the quiet, desperate struggle to remain anchored when the world demands you drift. The golden sun crests the jagged horizon of the Danubian frontier, illuminating the armor of a commander who has mastered the art of being invisible amidst the tumult of 10,000 men. Marcus Aurelius stands upon a limestone ridge, watching the dust clouds churn as supply lines falter and rumors of discord circulate through the camp like autumn leaves caught in a gale. To any other ruler, this scene would be a symphony of frustration, a chaotic orchestration of uncontrollable events. Yet, within the emperor's gaze lies a profound, disciplined stillness. He is practicing the most vital strategy of the ancient world, the dichotomy of control. He gazes at the distant horizon, realizing that the shifting tides of war, the moods of his advisors, and the whims of the elements are forces of nature, far beyond the reach of his singular will. They are the external currents, the unyielding waves against which lesser men break their spirits. If he anchors his peace of mind to the arrival of provisions or the loyalty of a subordinate, he becomes a slave to outcomes he cannot author. Instead, he turns his focus inward, narrowing his world to the only territory where his authority is absolute. His own perceptions, his own judgments, and the integrity of his immediate choices. This is not indifference. It is an impenetrable focus. By stripping away the emotional weight he attaches to external chaos, he preserves his clarity. When a messenger arrives with grim tidings of logistical failure or strategic setbacks, Marcus does not recoil in agitation. He dissects the information, separates the objective reality from the subjective alarm, and acts with the precision of a surgeon. He treats the event as mere material, a neutral circumstance upon which he can imprint the character of a virtuous soul. He understands that anxiety is simply a tax levied upon those who attempt to govern the ungovernable. By withdrawing his desire for external perfection, he finds a sovereign independence that no enemy can invade. As the legion prepares for the day's trials, Marcus remains untroubled. He is a sentinel of his own inner domain, recognizing that while the world may dictate the circumstances of his life, he alone dictates the terms of his existence. He has transformed the chaotic battlefield into a sanctuary of intentionality, proving that one can hold the world in one's hands only by first releasing the need to control its every turn. The vast expanse of a night sky stretches over the Roman encampment, a velvet tapestry pinned with the indifferent light of distant, eternal stars. Marcus Aurelius stands alone, his mantle heavy with the evening dew, gazing upward until the sprawling tents and the complexities of his governance shrink into insignificance. He employs a singular mental architecture, the view from above. In this suspended moment, he elevates his consciousness, detaching from the immediate gravity of his personal burdens to survey the world from the heights of a silent observer. From this vantage point, the intricacies of political intrigue, the stinging criticisms of his detractors, and the pressing anxieties of the imperial court appear as nothing more than shifting shadows in a much larger, ancient play. He visualizes the empire not as a fortress of stone, but as a fleeting moment in the colossal timeline of human history. The individuals who vex him, the challenges that seem insurmountable, and the ambitions that drive men to madness are suddenly revealed as inconsequential ripples on an infinite ocean. He reminds himself that before this age, there were countless others, and long after his own name has faded into the dust of archives, the dance of the cosmos will continue, unbothered by the echoes of his current trials. This perspective is not an act of resignation. It is a profound liberation of the intellect. When he descends back into the realm of his daily responsibilities, he carries the weightlessness of this cosmic detachment with him. The sting of a perceived slight or the burden of an urgent decision is neutralized by the realization of its own temporal fragility. By consciously shrinking his own importance, he discovers a vast, untapped reserve of resilience. He sees his life as a single breath in the lungs of existence, a vital, fleeting opportunity to act with wisdom, even as the tides of time threaten to carry it away. He recognizes that human distress is largely a product of a limited perspective, a myopia that confuses the temporary for the eternal. By anchoring himself in the grandiosity of the universal order, Marcus turns his gaze back to his duties with a renewed, serene clarity. The noise of the camp remains, but his internal landscape has shifted. He is no longer a man besieged by problems. He is a witness to the unfolding of nature, finding that by becoming small, he has finally achieved the capacity to endure everything. The air within the imperial encampment hangs heavy, laden with the somber quietude of a world in transition. A pervasive, invisible shadow has settled over the legions, as the Antonine fever moves through the ranks with the silence of falling snow. Marcus Aurelius walks the perimeter of the camp, observing the faces of those touched by this creeping uncertainty. In this atmosphere, where the boundary between life and the infinite thins, the emperor does not seek refuge in denial. Instead, he confronts the inevitable with the steady, unblinking gaze of a man who understands the nature of the turning seasons. To Marcus, the current affliction is not a personal grievance against fate, but an organic process within the interconnected fabric of the universe. He recognizes that change is the only constant law, a pulse that beats within the heart of every living entity. Just as a flower must eventually return to the earth to nourish the next spring, he understands that human existence is a temporary loan from the natural order. By stripping away the terror of the unknown and viewing this period of widespread loss through the lens of rational acceptance, he prevents the virus of panic from colonizing his own mind. He anchors his consciousness firmly in the present, the only domain where a human being can exert agency. In the midst of this turbulent darkness, he finds that fear is merely a story the mind tells itself about a future that has yet to arrive, or a past that has already departed. He practices the art of absolute presence, dedicating his energy to the task directly before him. A gesture of comfort for a suffering comrade, a clear-headed decision for the stability of his men, and the maintenance of his own internal integrity. He concludes that to live well is not to be spared from the fragility of mortal life, but to remain composed while witnessing it. By refusing to be swept away by the storm of collective anxiety, he becomes a pillar of stability for those around him. He teaches himself that when the world outside is in a state of dissolution, the internal landscape must be kept orderly and serene. His endurance is not born of a lack of feeling, but of a profound reconciliation with the truth that every sunset is followed by a dawn. In the quiet intensity of the present moment, he discovers that even when life is most fragile, one can exist with unwavering purpose and quiet dignity. Within the gilded chambers of imperial influence, shadows often manifest as whispered deceits and the calculated coldness of those seeking to climb the tiers of power. Marcus Aurelius moves through this web of human inconsistency with an observation that is as sharp as it is detached. He is acutely aware that many surrounding him act from a place of fractured understanding, driven by the echoes of their own internal insecurities and the misaligned desire for status. Yet, as reports of shifting loyalties arrive, the emperor does not descend into the bitterness that would erode his own soul. He chooses, instead, a path of profound, disciplined benevolence. He views the betrayal of others not as a personal wound, but as a symptom of a spirit that has lost its way. In his quiet reflections, he reasons that no human can truly be harmed by another unless they surrender their character to the contagion of resentment. When he encounters the dark impulses of a subordinate, he sees it as a failure of that individual's own moral architecture, a soul attempting to fill its emptiness with the fleeting gains of treachery. To respond in kind would be to mirror the very decay he seeks to overcome. Thus, he treats the deceit as a neutral element of the human experience, a friction that provides him the opportunity to exercise the highest virtues of patience and magnanimity. His kindness is not an expression of weakness, but a psychological shield of immense strength. By refusing to let the shadows of others infiltrate his inner citadel, he remains an island of integrity in a sea of volatility. He understands that to be human is to be fallible, and to be a leader is to accept the weight of those imperfections without becoming consumed by them. Each instance of dishonesty he encounters becomes an invitation to reaffirm his commitment to his own principles. He acts with clarity, not to reward the unfaithful, but to remain loyal to the dictates of his own conscience. In this way, he transforms potential bitterness into a steadying force for the empire. He perceives that even those who operate in the dark are part of the vast, interconnected tapestry of existence, and their errors are simply the discordant notes in a grand, natural symphony. By maintaining this elevated perspective, Marcus preserves his inner peace. He learns that the ultimate triumph over those who seek to undermine him is to remain completely unaffected, shielding his own spirit from the corruption of hatred and emerging from every trial more resolute, more composed, and entirely sovereign over his own reactions. The flicker of the oil lamp finally fades into the gray dawn, marking the end of a long, internal vigil. Marcus Aurelius closes his journals, the ink dry, the thoughts settled. He has navigated the tempests of war, the silence of plague, and the cold winds of betrayal, not by conquering the world around him, but by mastering the territory within.
As he steps from the sanctuary of his tent, the reality of the empire remains unchanged.
The challenges endure, the uncertainties persist, and the horizon is still shrouded in the fog of the unknown. Yet, for the emperor, the struggle is no longer a source of chaos. It is the very forge of his character. We often look to the past for blueprints of power, expecting kings to teach us how to dominate our circumstances. But the true legacy of Marcus Aurelius is not one of imperial expansion. It is an invitation to individual sovereignty. He teaches us that while we cannot orchestrate the winds, we can always adjust our sails. Whether you are navigating the pressures of a modern career, the isolation of personal loss, or the cacophony of a world that demands your attention at every turn, the fortress of your mind remains yours to fortify. True strength is not found in the absence of adversity, but in the quality of the internal dialogue you maintain while enduring it. When you feel overwhelmed by the demands of the day, remember the silhouette of the man in the tent, holding the quiet center while the world raged outside. You possess the same capacity for stillness. You hold the power to choose your response, to zoom out when the view is narrow, and to remain kind when the world is unkind. The battle is never truly over. It simply transforms. But armed with these ancient secrets of psychological survival, you are no longer a passive passenger to your circumstances. You are the architect of your own tranquility. As you move forward into your own uncertain future, carry this truth with you. The greatest empire you will ever rule is the one that exists behind your eyes. Keep your thoughts disciplined, your purpose clear, and your spirit anchored in the present. You do not need to command the world to find your peace. You only need to command yourself, and in doing so, you will find that you have conquered everything that truly matters.